Time to light the match for the burning truth with Ben Dallas.
Damn it, man. I hate making these kind of videos. So, welcome back to Ben's Rant Nation. Last weekend, I made a video about syndicated RINO radio host Casey Hendrickson. At the very end of my video, I mentioned something about him being our version, the Republican version of Tim Walz. And I alluded to how he's always talking about his military experience. He tries to say that he has this operations expertise because of his military experience. And he seems to lead his audience, lead them along as if maybe he deployed and he has real combat, real operational experience. And he does this a lot. So I put that out. Some of his defenders got online and they said, well, you know, he's not as bad as Tim Walz. He hasn't done stolen valor. And they went on to question me whether I had proof or not, if Casey deployed or if he definitively said that he deployed or not. Honestly, it's a fair question. You know, I don't have any proof. Military records, you can't just look them up. I can't just say, hey, I want Casey Hendrickson's DD-214 and just get it. So I can't prove whether he went to combat or not. It's just what I know from people that know him, okay? That being said, after I put out that video, somebody sent me this clip.
I know that most of you are aware of my history with Iraq and, at a broader extent, my unit history, if you will. My unit history, if you will. I don't need to go into details about it. I think some of you who have listened for an extended period of time understand that when I'm talking about these two countries, I have a fairly decent grasp of what's going on. I'm not an expert by any means. I don't pretend to be, but I have a fairly decent grasp, mostly because of my time in service.
Pay attention. This is key. He goes from my experience, and then quickly he shifts. If you watch his facial expression, it's like he realizes he made a mistake. And instead of correcting himself, he goes to a broader extent, my unit's experience. Who cares about his unit's experience? He's speaking to his audience as if he's a subject matter expert. That's what he's doing. So I don't care what your unit did. We care what you did. Now, most veterans will tell you a comparison like that is laughable. That's like saying in the year 2024, I'm stationed at Fort Lewis and I'm part of 2ID. Since 2ID also fought in the Korean War in the 1950s, that means I know about the Korean War as well. That's how stupid it sounds. Now, would he have made that shift in the discussion about his unit's broader experience if he'd in fact deployed? That's key, because he seems to be hinting that he did and that he has all this knowledge about a region that I'm pretty sure he's never even been to. He recently questioned Tim Walz about him committing stolen valor. Casey's situation is ironically a little bit similar to Tim Walz. Casey himself will say that his unit did in fact deploy. So why does his unit have experience and not him? Did his unit deploy without him? If so, why? Again, I don't have proof. I don't know. I just know what I've been told. But why would he correct himself? And by the way, this is a guy who gets paid to speak for a living. This is what he does. So the words that he uses are very precise. He words things exactly the way he wants his audience to hear them. So why would he correct himself? Why would he say his unit and not him? But then go on to suggest that he has all this superior knowledge of that area of the world, but he's simultaneously not an expert. Sounds awful confusing. See where I'm getting at? How do you have all this knowledge of Iraq and Afghanistan if you've never been there? Okay, and then why are you going to criticize Tim Walz for not deploying with his unit deployed, but then you, according to your own words, your unit deployed, and it doesn't sound like you went with your unit. Did you leave your unit behind? Those are all good questions. I don't have any definitive answers. I don't even know if Casey committed stolen valor, but I do know that he thinks Tim Walz committed stolen valor. Here's the clip of him questioning Tim Walz for doing something pretty similar to what he might have done.
Bergdahl, the traitor, at least deployed with his unit. Tim Walz refused to. I know people who were in his unit at the time he disappeared. I know people who were responsible for finding him. I know people who lost friends in that manhunt. But at least Bo Bergdahl deployed. Tim Walz refused.
Now, I want to be clear. Casey did not clearly say, he did not state they deployed to Iraq or Afghanistan. He never said that. He never claimed to be a combat veteran. Okay, he never claimed that. I'm not saying that he did, but he sure as hell alluded to it. He sure as hell suggested it. Now, if you didn't know any better, and you listened to either one of those clips or both of those clips of him talking, it would be pretty easy to assume that Casey is a combat veteran by the way he talks about the topic. Okay, and here's my experience. As a veteran myself, someone who served before will very clearly say, look, I didn't serve overseas. I didn't deploy. I did my 4 years and I got out. But my friends did. It's typically a thing that most former military do if they did not deploy. All former military do this. It's just a form of basic decency. So you don't lead people on to think you did something that you didn't do. So I think Casey does owe his listeners an explanation. As I said before in my previous video, I've listened to Casey for a couple of years before it took me that long to figure out he's a fraud. I'm not proud of that, okay? But I was absolutely convinced that this guy deployed. Absolutely convinced. With how he speaks in every show, all the stuff he says about any type of mass shooting or a school shooting, he'll jump in there with his operational experience, with his so-called operational expertise. He'll do that. And he'll make it sound like he has real experience in combat situations. And it turns out he most likely didn't. And if he did, again, why that correction about his unit doing something that he didn't do? Those are all good questions. Did he actually commit stolen valor? Well, here's the definition. So according to the AFBA, that's the Armed Forces Benefit Association, stolen valor is essentially a lie. It involves falsely claiming military service, rank, recognition, or even someone else's identity. Now, it does go on to say that just making stuff up isn't technically illegal, but there's a caveat to this. So in 2013, there's actually an amendment to stolen valor. So there's more to the definition. The amendment says the following: the lies in question must result in some kind of tangible benefit before they can be legally considered problematic. So again, did Casey Hendrickson lie? He didn't flat out lie, but he did mislead his audience. Hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully he did deploy. Hopefully he can come out and say, you know what? I did deploy. This is what I did. You know what? I'll be the first to say I'm wrong if that's the case. I hate being right about this stuff. But the things I'm hearing about him not deploying, and then him correcting his own language about talking about what his unit did instead of him, that's problematic. Okay? And he does benefit by gaining credibility with his audience, because a lot of his audience members, they're veterans. They're veterans and they look up to him and they trust his opinion. For them to feel misled, for them to see a guy that's lying about his own service, that's a slap in the face to his own audience. And I hope I'm wrong, and I hope he can come out and clear this up. I seriously do. That's all I got for right now. As always, stay informed, folks.
La 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 la. Casey's World.